for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News. We're bringing you a first look at these sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Riyadh Al-Samurai, Chief Sports Feature Writer at the Daily Mail, and Martin Hardy, the Times and Sunday Times sports correspondent. Let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them before we speak to Riyadh and Martin. City Eye mega deal after APT truce with Premier League. That is the headline in the Daily Telegraph sports section. It's following a settlement over dispute on associated party transactions, or APT rules. Back page of The Sun. Lights at the end of the tunnel. Tuchel will shine after horror walk. That is in reference to the 240-metre walk the pitch in Belgrade before England's World Cup qualifier against Serbia. Harry Kane also spoke to the media tonight. The Express goes with the headline, "I'm no flat-track bully." That is in response to Michael Owen's claims that the England captain took the easy option of joining Bayern Munich in 2023 instead of staying in the Premier League. Meanwhile, Harry Kane's old club, Spurs, their future remains a big talking point. On the Guardian website, they carry quotes from the club's CEO, that's Vinay Venkateshan, who says the Lewis family intends to own the club for generations after rejecting a takeover. All right, welcome once again to Riyadh and to Martin. We're going to start off with England, who will face their toughest test yet under Thomas Tuchel against Serbia away from home in a World Cup qualifier in Belgrade. Let's go to The Guardian. So, afraid of nothing, Tuchel certain England are ready for Belgrade Bear Pit. But Riyadh, this is a significant step up, both in terms of opposition to their last qualifier and atmosphere, isn't it?
Look, it's obviously going to be a step up on playing Andorra, and we've all done quite a bit of hand-wringing about that in the last few days. It was fairly dire, but we're kind of in that sort of strange dynamic with Tuchel where we kind of know that this period of time is relatively meaningless, but we also attach paramount importance because it's England. I've written it down here actually. They've only lost 4 World Cup qualifiers in 30 years, and we've seen how well that's gone for them when they actually get to the tournament itself. So what do you deduce from that? That they're meaningless, that in a 48-team World Cup the qualifiers are just staging posts. So look, I'm very cynical about reading too much into these performances, but at the same time, they do need to improve. You do need to see some sign of progress. I think if you kind of draw a comparison to Spain since the last Euros final, they've cracked on. England with Tuchel have not. So we do want to see some improvement. It can't be as bad as it was against Andorra because they simply wouldn't win. But they're 5 points clear in the group. Serbia have got a game in hand, granted, but a win would be pretty helpful just to restore that level of comfort. I don't feel any great need to inject jeopardy into whether they'll get there. It's more about performance and some level of cohesion and plan, whether that comes from long throw-ins or anything else. But you go on paper with this match, Serbia are 32 in FIFA's rankings. Yes, they're a decent side. They've got good players, but it's one England should be able to handle.
Let's just go into the inside page of the Daily Telegraph sports session. Tuchel will feel the heat without statement display. Is it that critical, do you think, Martin? I mean, we've just said that they're 100% in the qualifying campaign so far. They're doing okay without pulling up any trees.
Yeah, I think Riyadh just made a very good point there about I felt England were very fortunate to get to the final to play Spain, fortunate to be in the game with about 10 minutes to go, and then were defeated. And since then, change of manager, the team doesn't seem to have any cohesive style. It's scraping through games against some really, really poor opposition. We are now making Serbia out to be something like the 1970s Brazil, just to try and inject a bit of interest into these fixtures. I think England's friendlies used to be about as unwatchable a game of football as you could find, and they are now trying to top that with the group stage of World Cup qualifiers. And I think it was Paul Joyce, my colleague at the Times, who said that the game against Andorra on Saturday finished with rows of empty blue seats because fans had thought, we're going to get off early and try and beat the traffic because this is not an exciting form of football. The FA kind of stated in their appointment of Tuchel that it wasn't long term. This is to try and win a tournament. We're going to forget about Capello and Eriksson and DNA and everything else. And because this bloke's won the Champions League and won major trophies in Europe, he will therefore be able to inject the quality into the England players. As of yet, we have yet to see that at all. I understand completely the Telegraph's point because we want to see something from this group of players. I personally feel that may have been overhyped when you compare them to what Sven Goran Eriksson had, the quality he had, but there are still better players in this team than we have seen so far in these 4 games. What you would say to temper that is, come the World Cup, if England get the semi-final, this game and the rest of the games will be completely not only forgotten. It's a test for him to try and do something a little bit better than he's done so far. Very little urgency, very little style, very little progression. He will say, I am here to get to the finals and try and win them. But when you follow in England, you want to see a little bit more than this in the development phase of the players and in terms of this stage of this team's development.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point about sort of how memorable are these World Cup qualifiers. You only seem to remember them if they are critically important in terms of England not making the major tournament. I mean, I think the one that really stands out, 2008 and not making that Euros, losing 3-2 to Croatia at Wembley, the volley with the brolly, etc., etc. The Guardian called it a Belgrade bear pit. The Sun have actually got a sort of a picture of the tunnel at the Ratko Mitic Stadium. It's 240 metres long. It's through the bowels of the stadium, as Charlie White writes, he's already out there in Belgrade, with armed police lining the walls. England have got some very young players, Martin. How much will this be really taking them out of their comfort zone?
The one thing about the English team at the minute is they've all got experience of playing in hostile atmosphere. So when everybody's, yes, this will be particularly hostile. And it was interesting, Harry Kane in his interview saying the players have discussed what they will do if racism rears its ugly head once again. But obviously they're not going to say what that would be before the game. These players have came through so many aggressive stadiums in England. They've come through aggressive stadiums in Europe playing for their club. They've done it on the international stage. And the one thing I would give this group, or certainly the last 10 years of English players, is they've got a really good mentality. They've stood up for what they believe in. They've stood up to opposition fans, whether that's a boisterous atmosphere or one that steps over that line. It would be interesting to see what they do in this game tomorrow if things do go too far, because, certainly during Gareth Southgate's reign, these players weren't frightened at all to lead the country and lead on the front foot when it came to fighting back against racism. To answer your question, in terms of them being intimidated by the noise of the crowd, I just do not see that being an issue at all.
Well, Harry Kane and Thomas Tuchel have discussed what happens if they do hear any racist or discriminatory chants or behaviour and following UEFA protocols. So we know that is something that is certainly at least on their minds in some way, shape or form. Of course, they are just focusing on trying to get this next win in the World Cup qualifying. And talking of Harry Kane, a back page of The Express, I'm no flat track bully. Now, this is to do with comments made by Michael Owen, who suggested that he took the easy option by joining Bayern Munich a couple of years ago, and that winning the Bundesliga was no great shakes. It was nuts as a thing to do and should have stayed in the Premier League. Harry Kane obviously not particularly happy with Michael Owen's comments. What do you make of it, Riyadh?
At times, I actually thought the sort of wider interview Michael Owen gave was very interesting. I think he missed with this one, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if there's anything massively easy about leaving the club where you've spent the better part of your life and taking on a new challenge abroad of all the challenges. And we saw in the first season in Germany that they didn't actually win anything at all. So I suppose that kind of shot down one aspect of the argument. And the other is he's on course to break all manner of records now that he's over there as well. I think what he's actually done is proven that he's one of, if not the greatest England striker we've ever seen. He's taken it, he's transferred it abroad. He has finally won that trophy, which I would also argue is a total vindication, because had he stayed at Tottenham, who knows what would have happened? But you know, he's gone over there. He's proven himself. I don't think he really had anything to prove anyway. So no, it was a slightly curious one from Michael Owen, but we'll kind of let that one go through to the wicket keeper, I think.
Yeah, Martin, I think, I guess one of the reasons that Harry Kane might have stayed at Tottenham, or at least in the Premier League, would be to break the all-time goal-scoring record held by Alan Shearer, and Michael Owen presumably thinks that would have been enough of an incentive. But is there much strength in that argument?
Given the bad blood between Michael Owen and Alan Shearer, Michael Owen may have wanted Harry to stay to beat it for alternative reasons, I think. No, it's a curious debate. I quite like English players going abroad and doing very well, and whether it's the cultural benefits, the different style of football, the tactical elements. I think it's for the betterment of the England team. I'm not exactly sure there were that many options on the table for Harry Kane when he went to Bayern Munich. Certainly the prospect of Tottenham winning the title, impossible. I think the Manchester City move had been 12 months earlier. There'd been mention of Manchester United 12 months around the time he went to Bayern Munich. That wouldn't have been the greatest move in terms of trying to win something Harry Kane could have made. I think it was a brave move to go there. Whatever he does, he just keeps scoring goals, whether it's for England, whether it was for Tottenham, and now it's at Bayern Munich, scoring an incredible amount of goals. Perhaps in Michael Owen's defence, the Bundesliga isn't the Premier League. It's not as competitive. It's not as difficult. I'm sure we're going to talk about developments in the Premier League in the second half of the show and how that may impact upon the rival European leagues as well. But give Harry Kane his dues here. He's gone to Bayern Munich, this one of the five biggest clubs in the world, and has done very, very well. Puts the bit of silverware in his trophy cabinet that stops those cheap jokes at him, and continues to score goals. What is he, 32 now? There could still be an awful lot of football left in him.
Yeah, so England go to Serbia, and they'll be hoping that Harry Kane maybe has more than the 12 touches that he got against Andorra, and has a significant role to play in the game. All right, thank you for the moment, gents. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will take a look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Telegraph, as the Premier League and Manchester City end their dispute over associated party transactions. We're back in a couple of minutes. to Riyadh Al Samurai, Chief Sports Feature Writer at the Daily Mail, and Martin Hardy at the Times, and Sunday Times sports correspondent. Right, let's go to one of the stories that's really dominating the papers, and that is that Manchester City and the Premier League have reached a settlement in their dispute over the rules governing APTs, or associated party transactions. And just to be absolutely clear on this legal action is completely separate to the one covering the more than 100 charges against Manchester City for alleged breaches of Premier League financial rules. By the way, those are charges that are completely and strenuously denied by Manchester City. And this settlement ends a dispute which began back in 2023. Martin, let me come to you first on this one. So, joint statement provided by both camps. The language described as amicable. What is your reaction to this decision to settle?
I'm not sure if people are ever happy with a compromise, but in this one, reading, in between the lines, reading some excellent journalism from my colleagues at the Times, Matt Lawton and Martin Ziegler, this is Manchester City's victory, and they will now press ahead. I think that was in Matt Lawton's intro. The legal challenge over sponsorship deals now enables Manchester City to complete a hugely lucrative long-term deal with Etihad Airways. There are interesting figures in what Matt has done, and one of the challenges the Premier League faced, and they faced this when Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund wanted to become the new owners of Newcastle United, was the cost of the legal challenge. So Adam Crafton about a year ago wrote a piece regarding that takeover, and Adam Crafton from the Athletic, and said the fears were that the legal bill was going to cost the Premier League into tens of millions. Towards the end of Matt's story today, he has said the end of this challenge, it means that a battle that was costing both sides tens of millions of pounds in legal fees appears to have been resolved. What it means, and again, that there are eye-watering figures from Matt's story. The Etihad sponsorship of Manchester City's ground, which was worth £400 million over 10 years. The new deal that they want to get through, and which they now believe has been unlocked by this today, could be worth £1 billion. So the Manchester City have argued successfully that that fair market value in terms of sponsorship deals had elements that were unenforceable, and I think it was even the legality was challenged by the three people that are on the legal panel. At the same time, there was a problem for the Premier League in terms of clubs like Arsenal and Brighton, who had interest-free loans from the people that owned the football club, which could not be replicated by the likes of Newcastle and Manchester City, who have, you call them state-owned football clubs. This seems like a way that Manchester City can use, and it gets very technical in the legal terms here, but it seems they successfully argued and showed the panel that there would be benefits for Abu Dhabi for the sponsorship with Manchester City and to be used within the Premier League. To the layman, I think it means Manchester City got richer today and can spend more money in the transfer market.
Well, we know that as part of the joint statement, identical statements released by both the Premier League and Manchester City, we're not going to be hearing any more from either party as concerns this situation. And I wonder, Riyadh, do you concur with what Martin has just said? If they do resubmit a proposed new sponsorship deal with Etihad Airways, that this legal challenge effectively sort of strengthened their case?
Strengthens their case with regards to the 115/130?
No, nothing to do with that. We know, and we did say right at the start, this has nothing to do with that situation, which is still live, and we're still, awaiting the outcome of an independent commission on that one. No, in terms of the situation with Etihad Airways and trying to resubmit, as Martin said, the original agreement, 400 million in 2011, it could be far, far greater than that.
Well, look, if you think about that deal, that original 400 million being reached in 2011, and what City have gone on to achieve since then, it very much stands to reason that we'd be looking at substantially more. I think $1 billion is a huge number. I would very much like to know how these fair market valuations are reached. I would love to know therefore what a fair market valuation would be for a club like Manchester United, which has got a far greater global footprint. I think, unfortunately, in this communications blackout that both sides have now promised, we might not necessarily get the answers immediately on that one. But certainly today, it looks like Man City are in a far stronger position. I would again be very interested to know what the ramifications are now, what this potentially unlocks also for Newcastle. We know that they are truly the sleeping giant in the Premier League. They are the richest club in the world if we go by the value of their backers. So what doors open there? At the moment, we're very light on details about what this means. I would suggest in the bigger picture that we'll step lightly around. But this is very much a ceasefire. It's a momentary peace. The bigger issue between those parties is still to be resolved, and we continue looking at the clock, waiting for that one. But for now, certainly, it feels like some potential has been unlocked for Manchester City, and I can imagine they're very happy about it.
Let's turn our attention to Tottenham Hotspur. And in The Guardian, the Spurs CEO, that's Vinay Venkatesham, formerly of Arsenal, of course, says that the Lewis family intend to own the club for generations after rejecting a takeover. And of course, we know that previously, in terms of who has been interested, the one name that's been linked, Amanda Staveley and PCP International, who have confirmed it will not make an offer. Martin, what's your read on this after Daniel Levy stepped down as executive chairman just a few days ago? Obviously, this is still just sort of like bubbling along, isn't it?
I think that Tottenham have been looking potentially for investment in the football club for quite a long time. Amanda Staveley had led a consortium that were initially talking about taking a stake in the club, but that seemed to grow to the potential of making a takeover. I think today's statement means they can't make an approach in the next 6 months. There was one more potential buyer as well. It doesn't feel coincidental that Daniel Levy leaves and people assume that this is the time now to make an approach for Tottenham. The one thing I would say in football, as we've seen with footballers and this summer and in clubs in the past, is that everybody's for sale. If you had the right amount of money, Tottenham Hotspur would be for sale. But if you are selling Tottenham Hotspur, you do not come out in the media today and say, yes, we are definitely up for sale. I suspect they will keep the status quo at the club for some time now. But it's a club that Daniel Levy has left in good financial condition, with a brilliant ground and a brilliant training ground. It would certainly appeal to an investors, I would suspect. I don't think that will go away. But so within the next 6 months to 12 months, we will see. I'm sure there'll be more approaches to try and buy Tottenham.
We've dealt with quite a lot of sort of chunky, heavy-ish, I suppose, stories, guys, on the show this evening. Manchester City in the Premier League, England's situation in Serbia, of course, Tottenham and a potential takeover. Let's finish off with this one. The Premier League has announced a shortlist of 15 players to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and a public vote will help determine 2 names to join the existing 24 players already in the Hall of Fame. So have a look at this list here. You've both got to pick 2, briefly, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So a minute each. Make sure you tell us why. So 2 that are going to go through. Riyadh, who are your couple?
Sore, because I think he redefined the midfield role. That he was really the last of those truly great box-to-box midfielders as well. I'd also go with Sol Campbell, at the risk of upsetting a number of my friends who support Tottenham, because he was an absolute colossus.
Okay, Martin, who have you gone for? Who are your couple that should be joining the Hall of Fame?
Les Ferdinand, without shadow of a doubt, this brilliant dynamic.
Oh, I could have bet on you saying that, given where you're based, Martin Harding.
He's a cracking bloke, but I think if I hadn't put him in, he might not speak to me again. But also a brilliant football, a real powerful centre forward, would be competing with Harry Kane now for a place, given the paucity of English strikers. And I would also say Teddy Sheringham, such an intelligent, clever footballer. That number 10 role that I love watching play, which seems to kind of be missing in the modern game. A fantastic player, linked up so well with Alan Shearer.
I've got to come in here because, I know that I'm meant to be, unbiased, but not David Silva, Cesc Fabregas, come on. I have a bit of a bias because I used to present La Liga here, but no one biting here? No.
I can see the merits, but it's one of those where you'll have to be made to wait for a few years and it'll only sweeten the achievement when it arrives.
Yes, I think so. I think you're right. Thank you for digging me out that one, Riyadh. Great to speak to you both. Riyadh, Martin, appreciate your company and your insights as always this evening. We'll see you again very soon, I am sure. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight, hour. The show also available as a podcast. So just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Tuesday night. Our guests will be Henry Winter and David Ornstein. 10:30 start as always. Focusing on England, 100% so far in their World Cup qualifying campaign.